Welcome to Morrison Madness. I'm Don.
I'm LaShelle.
And on this episode, we are going to have a discussion, because it came up somewhere, about whether or not you would go back and relive your high school years.
Yeah.
And there's there was kind of two caveats to it. Would you just go back and redo it and not, without knowing what you know now?
Right, like go back in time, everything rewinds, relive it the way that it was.
Well,
then,
it might be a little bit different, but you don't know anything about the future to where
Correct.
you're going to make big changes.
Right.
And then the other one was, if knowing what I know now, would I go back?
Sure.
So there was the two different things.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you didn't know what you know now, would you go back and relive high school?
No.
No?
No.
Not at all.
No.
And how come?
I would go back and relive college if I didn't know what I knew.
Okay, that's
now.
not the question.
I know.
How come?
But
Why wouldn't you?
because it wasn't overly enjoyable for me. I mean, there were components that I enjoyed, but there are other things that I enjoyed better that were similar that I would prefer to go back to those times, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So that's influencing my decision. So, like, I loved show choir, but I had more fun in show choir in college than what I did in high school. So then why would I go back to the high school show choir when I can do the college show choir?
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's more where I'm coming from. I didn't. Yeah, no, I wouldn't go back.
I absolutely would.
That does not surprise me.
And I'm not, like Al Bundy, who, won the state football championship or won the basketball championship or anything like that. I wasn't a super jock or anything. I just had so much fun in my high school years. And part of it is, and I think most people who have paid attention to our episodes realize there's an age difference between us.
There is a little bit of an age difference between us,
And
yes.
so when I was in high school, the stuff that you could get away with,
Have we ever said what our age difference is?
I'm pretty sure we have.
Should we say that now that we've brought it up and people are going, wait,
We
have we
will.
heard that? Oh, okay.
The stuff that I got away with in high school would have been harder for you to get away with when you were in high school, and
Oh, yeah.
almost impossible for kids to get away with
Yes.
now. Even the stuff that I did that I shouldn't have done, that I got caught for,
Right.
the punishment was so much less severe.
And I think part of that, too, it might also be your hometown versus my hometown versus when you're thinking of kids today, it's kind of your kids and the town that we're in now that your kids are going to school in. Do you know what I mean? Like
There is a difference between
there's
small town
differences
and larger town.
Right.
But even now, my kids would not have been able to get away with the stuff that I did at the same
No.
school that I went to.
No. And I don't think the opportunities in some ways are the same either. Like I had, jobs when I was in middle school. I, delivered papers from the time I was really little. We talked about one point. I started helping when I was 3 and took over when I was 5. There is nothing like that for kids here. And even my understanding is even in my hometown, they kept upping the age because it was 9 years old that you could start having your own paper route technically. Mine was in my brother's name, even though I took over it, which is how I had one. But
right, and the
by
reason
the
they kept
time-
raising it was because of that kid Johnny Gosh that got kidnapped doing his paper route.
okay, that could be. But they kept raising the age to where then you're almost having to be like 16 before you can have a paper route. And at that point, you can work at other places that are going to pay more for the types of work. And so unless you really enjoy that specific kind or you wanted the flexibility of being able to do it, right after school only a couple times a week or something along those lines, it doesn't pay for the kids to take over the paper routes in that way.
So the way that this topic came up is we were discussing the fact that this year will be your 25th high school reunion,
my
and
25th.
it will be my 35th high
Yes.
school reunion.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure people can do the math.
I don't know.
Well, everybody outside of Biden is going to get that there's a 10-year age difference there.
Oh,
Biden will
Lord.
need to form a committee to get that
Just to
worked
double
out for
check.
him. Yeah.
So yeah, my 25th.
Not that Trump's math is any better. I don't.
Oh.
Well, I don't want people to think that I'm.
No, right.
I'm an equal opportunity
Offender.
Yeah, they're
yes,
both
you are.
horrible presidents in my opinion. So, yeah, I had so much fun. I mean, I my dad grew up working on cars, having cars, racing cars, and so when I first got my first car and learned how to drive, my dad taught me about some of those kinds of things and doing fun things with them, how to do donuts. We would go to the school parking lot and do donuts with a rear-wheel drive car, and then we went home and got the front-wheel drive car, and he showed me how to do them in reverse with the front-wheel drive car. And
right.
I just the parties, and I think just the atmosphere in the 80s. I mean, it was...
And that could be a big part of it.
It was the decade of excess, they call
right.
it, and the music was a huge thing,
right.
and MTV had come out, and computers, home computers had just become
started.
A thing.
Yep.
They were expensive, but they were a thing, and video
right.
games, and
right.
Yeah, there just was so many things that it was so much fun. I would not be I would love to be able to sit down and play some of my old video games.
Sure.
Like, I don't care for most of the new video games.
Right.
It's just a personal preference.
Right.
But there's a lot of the old video games, even if I could get them now, I've tried to find some of them, and the ones that I really liked, and I can't get them.
Sure.
Or if I could, they would be super expensive.
Sure.
So it's just little things like that
sure.
To me, it would be a blast.
Sure.
So then the flip side of that, if you could go back and redo high school knowing what you know now, then does that make a difference? Then would you do it?
Yes. Yes, then I would go back and I would pay more attention to my health and learn how to work out better. Even though I hate working out.
Is that the only thing?
That's the main thing. And now, so when you say you knowing what you know now, I'm not taking into account of knowing, like, who's going to win the Super Bowl or something that way to where I can bet and make $1 million.
No, it's only things that you know and can remember. So if you had a great memory specifically for Super Bowls in what year and who won.
Yeah, that's the thing.
You don't get to take notes and take them back with you. It's only what you remember.
But even so, like, I don't feel like I know anything now to where I could have gone back and made $1 million now because of what I know now. Like that, I'm not taking anything like that into account. I'm taking more in knowing who I am and what opportunities would be afforded to me later. I would go back and focus on certain things to make it easier, better, things along those lines. Like now when it's harder as I'm older to work out and stay in shape, if I had learned how to do that, because I even remember instructors of mine saying, you should come work out with us. And I'm like, again, most people don't necessarily know this, but I'm 5'9", 5'10". I was 105 pounds my senior year when I started, and I was the same height. I didn't need to work out. I could eat nonstop and not put on a pound.
But that isn't necessarily what working out is about. And so
right. And so then these teachers were like, you need to come work out with us. And I'm like, why? Like, there's no reason for me to work out. I can't put on weight. And they're like, no, you need to come and learn how to lift weights because then you're going to build this muscle. And later on in life, when it's hard to keep that weight off, you're going to know how to make that happen. And I'm like, whatever, that's not a thing. And I didn't spend any time doing it. I didn't want to learn to do it at the time. Now I wish, yes, I could go back and take that advice and be like, yes, teach me how to lift weights to make it a habit to where I'm doing it consistently throughout my life so I don't end up struggling with weight later on. So in that sense, yes, I would go back and I would change that kind of stuff. And I would probably do a little bit more of certain things. Like, I love the fact that I went on the trip to Europe. I would do more stuff like that. I would have taken maybe even a little more risks to be able to do that kind of stuff rather than taking the safer route at the time. And I can't think of a specific example, but if there was an opportunity to do something, I probably would have more apt to take that risk and do it because I tended to be a very overly safe individual.
Well, I would have definitely gotten tested for ADD and had somebody help me put routines in place so where I built the habits, because I know how to work out, but it's not a habit that I kept up with. I mean, there were lots of times in my life where I worked out for long periods, I mean, years at a time,
right?
And was in good shape, and I didn't want to ever be big and bulky like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, right.
But I wanted to be in good shape and strong and be able to do the things I wanted to do.
Right.
And yes, I wish I had those habits, but not just for working out. I wish I had, better habits for just my daily routine of getting stuff done.
Right.
And that's something that really, it's hard to form those habits at 50,
Right.
Something if you would have started when you were in junior high or high school,
yeah,
it would have been much easier.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, and this is something that I don't think you think about, if when you started doing this paper route, if you took $5, I don't know how much you made, if you made $10 a week, if you took $5 every week, instead of putting it into a savings account, you bought Apple shares or
right, and that's the part
Microsoft.
That's what I was trying to allude to, that I'm not taking that into account. If I knew and understood like the stock market kind of thing or whatever, and I could go back and do that, but I don't feel like I know it well enough now even to be able to say, 20 years ago I should have invested in this.
Well, you know what companies have been around for 20,
yeah,
30
but I
years.
still don't know that even so, like, I agree with you, but I don't know that I would change that. And again, part of me is I have always been fairly fiscally responsible, so it's not something that I am overly concerned with. I mean, it would make it really nice and easy now if I was, set and didn't have to worry about working for the rest of my life. But at the same time,
I definitely would have, had, again, back in the 80s, $5
right.
a week would have been a ton of money. And then as your
right.
job's in, because minimum wage back then was like $3.25 or $3.35 or something,
yep.
So $5 or $10 out of a paycheck invested into stocks, knowing what I know now, Disney, Apple, Microsoft,
right. No,
I don't know, I'm not this great stock person, but I know those companies have been around
right.
for that amount of time, and they're
right.
still here and they're doing well.
Right.
When Amazon came out, buying
right.
stocks, then.
Right.
And investing more when I was old enough, when I was out of high school and back from the military, investing more in properties. I mean, it's something that I've always wanted to do anyway, and I always ran into roadblocks. But knowing what I know now, I would have made a point to have a few less beers or a few less fast food meals or whatever, so I
sure.
had the money to invest in those kinds of things.
Sure.
For my future, for my kids' future.
Sure. No, it totally makes sense. Again, part of it is...
And hopefully I could have had just as much fun and not gotten caught, knowing what I know now.
Part of it is, too, is, again, fiscally wise, I didn't have the, I don't regret any of the fast food meals that I had. Like, I don't feel like I look back and go, I spent too much on this, or I spent too much on that, because that was the type of person that I was. I really thought that stuff through from the beginning. That was kind of ingrained in me by Mom. Thanks, Mom. To make sure that you really, you weighed that. It wasn't let's grab this burger, or go out to eat and get this food here because it's convenient. It was, okay, so if you go and you get that burger, that's how many hours worth of work when minimum wage is $3.25, and the burger is going to cost you $4 or $5. And so is it worth, an hour and a half of work for that burger, or are you better off frying up a burger at home kind of thing? And that was just the way everything was always presented.
And I get that, but if you think about the fact that if you would have put $5 in stocks back then,
right
now it wouldn't be... And I'm not trying to imply that we're struggling,
no.
but you wouldn't be worried about whether or not
right.
Congress was going to sign off on people not having to pay back a certain amount of student loans, or
right.
canceling all the student loans, or whatever they're going to do,
right.
Because you would have invested that money and you could just
yes.
pay them off, and
yes.
we wouldn't be taking out loans.
Correct.
While you're back in school now. We would
yes.
just pay for it.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes. If I felt like I could understand it well enough that I would be safe to do it, 100% I would do it. I don't know that I even now feel like I could do that well.
Yeah, I mean, you are correct that you have always been fiscally, purposeful and intelligent about it. You were taught
Stingy. I've been stingy.
No, I wouldn't say that.
I
when
would.
I first met you, you had just gone to Sam's Club and bought a 45-inch TV or something for your bedroom.
Yes.
That's not stingy. You splurged when you wanted to splurge,
yeah.
But you were practical,
Yes, there were certain things that I would save up, but I saved up for them. I had
right.
a goal, and I would save up for it. I didn't do, like, impulse buys in that way.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And while I did do more impulse buying than you did, I had completely different circumstances. Yes. I was a single parent
yes.
at different points in my life, and I had my kids with me, and,
right.
so I had expenses that you didn't have.
Right.
So even if we were making the exact same amount of money, you were going to be able to save way more money than I was.
Yeah, because I didn't have the dependence and things that way,
right.
even though I did have a 4-legged child that I totally spoiled.
Right.
And now we have 2 that I continue to spoil. But yeah, yes.
Yeah, we're going to I'm going to change the Amazon password. Our puppies did not need a slide for
sure
Christmas.
They did.
No,
yes.
They didn't. They don't even like it. They're like, this is
Chewy
weird.
Does.
Whatever.
Chewy does. I put toys up on it, and he pulls them down. He enjoys
but he
it.
doesn't climb up it and slide down it.
He hasn't figured that
repeatedly.
out yet. No, and I didn't realize it would be that big. Either. I tried to measure it out based on the descriptions, and I thought it would be a lot smaller, and so it's way bigger than I planned. But I did do research before I bought it. This is totally off topic, but I did do research on it before I bought it, and that's one of the things that people that have litters of puppies, they have these little slides for the puppies to climb up and slide down, and that's one of the things that is
and yes,
good for them.
You're getting off topic.
100%, but I'm defending myself.
I definitely would have.
There was reasoning.
I definitely would have done more adventurous things.
You wouldn't have survived
when I was younger. What I'm talking about is, I didn't take a second language in high school. I probably would have taken a second language.
Gotcha.
And then gone on the Spanish trip.
Sure.
I think they went to Mexico, and at one point, I think there was an opportunity, and I can't remember what for, but to go to Europe for some business, some company that I worked for, and part of it to me was it seemed awful expensive, but looking back now, what I would have gained from that,
right,
from a cultural experience,
right,
kind of thing, even if I didn't get a ton out of it for the company, I would have gained in other ways,
right,
and I would have done more of those kinds of things.
Sure. Yeah, and that was the one thing that, even though, again, the fiscally responsible part of me would have been like, oh, that's expensive. Again, my mom and dad both were always like, but you're going to have the experience that you would not have if you don't go. And that experience is worth more than the expense of this at this point.
Right.
And so they were very supportive in, you should go do as much as you can do. There, the whole, right now there's the trend of don't buy things for holidays and birthdays, buy experiences for people.
Right.
And that was kind of my parents, even though they didn't necessarily buy us experiences for holidays and stuff, they valued those experiences. And so the experiences were worth more than what most people would think that they would, based off of our other ways of spending on stuff.
Absolutely.
So, we would drive the 15, 20-year-old car and not get a new car because the car works fine, but we'll go to Europe because that's a good experience.
Right.
Even though, Dad's having to fix the car every week because one little thing is going wrong on it or something that way. Yes, that it didn't make sense to other people that's what we would do, but now looking back, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, and there's more things I think that I would have learned from my dad. I learned how to, back then cars didn't have all the electronics and computers and stuff in them, so I could tear a car apart and rebuild it. I would have learned more diagnostic stuff in that way, and I also would have learned more about bodywork. He tried to teach me, and I just didn't have an interest.
Sure.
And now the more things that I could have learned, I think is my big thing. I would have taken the opportunity to try and learn more of those things.
I would have learned piano. Sorry, Mom. My mom is an amazing piano player, and she taught lessons for years, and she always wanted both my brother and I to learn piano. Neither one of us would actually practice. So neither one of us are very... I know enough to read music, and I can kind of sort of play with my right hand. a melody line. I can't play chords very well. I can't play more than 1 or 2 notes in my right hand very well. But yeah, I would. That would be one of those things that if I knew now and went back even further than high school, I would pay attention and I would actually practice piano and I would learn it because it's something that I could enjoy now.
Yeah, I don't. Going back, when I think about it, it's not like, oh, there's these huge things that I would have changed and not done.
Right.
The mistakes that I made, while, yes, they were, I got in trouble with the police at one point, and I'm not saying that everybody should go out and do this, but
no, do not do that.
Having that experience of spending a night in jail, to me, this isn't a big secret. It doesn't bother me. People know I was at a school dance at a school that wasn't my school, and I had been drinking, and the cops pulled me out, and they were very nice about it. They said, if you can get a hold of an adult to come and pick you up, we'll release you to them. I called everybody I could think of,
right,
and nobody was home. It was a Friday night. Everybody was out doing stuff,
right.
And so they said, well, we don't really have a choice,
right.
So I had to spend the night in jail for public intox,
right.
So, which is a good thing, because had they let me go, I mean, I wasn't in my hometown. I would have driven home,
right,
which could have been much worse.
Yes.
So
yes.
I don't blame the police. The police were
and it was a good life experience at that time.
Yes.
To not do stupid stuff later.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I would go back and try and erase all of those things.
Right.
And again, I'm not advocating that people should do it either. I don't want anybody to think that.
No, you should learn from other stories first before you try them all out on your own.
Absolutely.
Where you were more of like, I'm going to try everything, and other people can learn from my stories. I think is kind of your philosophy.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of, if I could go back and keep the knowledge that I have now, yes, I would change some things. And I would go back and do it or relive it, just because knowing then too that the experience that I was going to have, or I would value it more maybe.
Right. Absolutely.
Is kind of the ultimate thing. And so, now it's good to look back on those memories, but I would have taken more of it in at the time had I known.
Yep.
So that would probably be the biggest thing. But if I didn't have any knowledge, if time just rewound and I had to redo it and I had that option, no, I don't feel like I need to go back and relive anything. Make sense?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
Right.
So that was our topic for this week. If you
would you go back?
Yeah.
And relive high school.
What are your thoughts?
Caveats.
What are your thoughts on it?
If you didn't have,
and why or why not?
Right. If you didn't have the knowledge, and if you did have the knowledge both ways, why and why not? Let us know. We want to hear what your stories are and things that way.
Yeah, absolutely. You can comment on the YouTube video, or you can comment in our Facebook group, or on whatever other social media things.
Our Facebook page.
This kind of stuff, we
Instagram.
love getting to know little things about people.
Yes.
Even if we've never met you,
yes.
Whether they're the same way that we feel about it, or if they're different than how we feel. Because obviously we don't feel the same way about it. So I just think those more personable things are really cool to learn about people.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to hear your guys' stories and more of your thoughts along those lines. So make sure you're commenting. Follow us on all of the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those good things that way. And we will see you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.